welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Best Fleets to Drive For podcast. I'm Mark Morrell, co-creator of the Best Fleets to Drive For program, and I'm joined today by my old friends from Liberty Linehaul and Liberty Linehaul West, Chris Gerber and Teresa Barclay. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Hello.
So I have been a fan of this company for many years, and they are a multi-time best fleet. And today we're going to talk about all of the reasons why. And to start off with, let's have you give just a quick overview of the company, where you're located, what you do, and how many drivers you have.
Okay, Teresa, you can start.
Okay, well, our head office is located in Ayr, Ontario. We have another terminal in Montebello, California. Our total employees rate or drivers right now is 135. It fluctuates, here, there. But in Canada, we have 38 company trucks, 6 owner operators, and at Liberty West, we have a total of 51 drivers, and 6 of those are owner operators.
Okay. And what kind of freight do you haul primarily?
It's general freight, basically. We have some specialty things like, office furniture or home furniture, but for the most part, it's general skidded freight.
That's at the Canadian office. In
Right.
The US
Sorry. Yeah.
In the US office, Mark, we're getting involved in the entertainment side of the business. We just started that program about 7 months ago, and it's going very, very well.
Okay. So right off the top, there's something that is kind of distinct about how you operate it, and that is the fact that you've got 2, not even really divisions, almost separate operating companies. So could you talk to us a little bit about how that, or where you started, how you ended up having the 2 groups, and how they complement each other?
Well, I guess, Mark, Liberty Canada started in 1987, and we started general freight cross-border in 1987, and in 1997, I was the lucky one who chose a short straw and moved to Los Angeles and started up the US company called Liberty Linehaul West. At first, we were just going to start a cross-dock facility, and then we realized that there's an opportunity here that our Canadian clients wanted to make use of our trucks. So decided to purchase a few trucks, start off they're very small, and started running a US domestic division, which has grown successfully over the past 25 years. And it's worked very well. And so it's great for our Canadian teams to go and single drivers to go down there. It's great for our US drivers to come up to Liberty Canada and to create one company, basically, so be it. That's how it became one company. So, but with different names, obviously, it makes it a lot easier, right?
Mm-hmm. But you also have very different cultures between the group that you have there in Ontario and the group that you have in the Los Angeles area. So, talk a little bit about where you've had some challenges there, or how you've managed to keep everybody together and fit those groups, together as a unit, because you've been fairly successfully for a number of years operating those 2 divisions, and they're both growing. So you're obviously doing a lot there. Does it present challenges for you in terms of your things like benefits package or the different programs that you offer for drivers? And if so, how do you balance all of those things?
It certainly does. That's been a challenge quite a few years ago, and we've overcome those challenges by creating a Circle 8 strategy to accommodate those challenges. And like you mentioned with the benefits, I'll let Teresa talk about that, and the 401k versus the pension in Canada. But one thing is we did discover early on was processes. Write the processes up, use the processes, which was ISO certified in Canada quite a few years ago, and take those same processes and apply them at Liberty West. They work, we know they work, so let's get the processes. So that creates your foundation. Once you have your foundation in place, you can create whatever means that you have to with the diversity that we have at Liberty West or Liberty Canada. And like Teresa, I know has had a few challenges with the benefit programs, especially in the US. It's a lot different than Canada, and I'll let Teresa touch about a little bit of that, Mark, and then I'll go back to the Circle 8.
Yeah, when I started here 18 years ago, and trying to get a little bit involved with LibWest just to sort of figure out what they were doing in their policies, because I needed to know that. There were a lot of things that weren't happening there that we wanted to do to carbon copy the same policies, benefits, that sort of thing, which is really hard because it's a totally different, unique world there. California has different laws and things you can and cannot do. But basically now we're very similar. They have a medical benefit package that a lot of companies are doing now, but 15 years ago, a lot of employers in California did not offer that sort of thing. So we've been trying to, make it the best we can for our employees. And we have a 401k, which is the same as a group pension here. And I've always been involved in it and sort of monitored everything to make sure we're doing the same thing. We also pay vacation pay there, which is also unheard of. So just like we do here. So our handbooks are very similar to what we offer to our employees.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask about the vacation, because that's an area that's very different on each side of the border. And as soon as you get drivers from one side or the other talking about it, you're going to start discovering if there's any discrepancies. So you do have to keep it consistent, but at the same time, they're very different cultures. So it can be a challenge to justify putting in something that group wouldn't normally have. So that must have been a real challenge putting together.
It's foreign to them. It's foreign to payroll companies, because obviously we have different payroll providers because we have to, because it's a different country. It's foreign to them. So explaining what we want to do is like a crew vacation pay. They really didn't know what that meant. So
Wow.
it's like, yeah, it is. It's a lot of employees don't get that. It's not a law here. It's as soon as you start, you are accrued a percentage, and it's not even a law there. So that's what we do. That's what we offer. It's helped us, get the right people.
Wow. Okay. And so, Chris, you were going to talk about Circle 8. So how does that factor into all of this?
Well, we discovered, Mark, years ago that we had the two companies, and they were starting to separate in such a way that how do we bring this back online? How do we bring, the communication, operations, sales, our maintenance programs, how do we bring that online? So we come up with a strategy. It's called Circle 8, and it's basically a label, to be quite honest with you, but it works very, very well when you have different offices, branches. It could work for 3 branches, it could work for 10 branches. So what it is that you create a dashboard on your POIs, basically out of your financials. I don't want to go into too detail, but you create your dashboards. And what are your dashboards? What are your important things within the company and the organization, such as financials, driver retention, purchasing, big picture purchases, accounting, ops tied in with sales, ops west tied in with sales. So there's basically, we call it 6 innovative teams. So every month you do your financials. Out of those financials, you get your dashboards are created. And for example, let's say Teresa, she is in retention and her group is in retention, and the dashboard shows a yellow. Okay, so there's 3 colors to monitor. If you're in the yellow, that means that your team has to get your dashboard back into the green, meaning that how many meetings you have to have, meetings back on meetings back on meetings, to make sure that these dashboards by 30 days are cleaned up. So what I've discovered, Mark, is rather than saying to the manager or saying to the group, okay, you're in the yellow, you got to do something about it. No, we're going to dive in. Executives going to dive in and help that team get back up into the green. What do we have to do as a corporation, both corporations, to get Teresa's area back into the green dashboard? So whatever that might be, an increase, a different strategy, what is that at different levels to get that back green? And if it works, in 30 days, her department will be back in the green. So I don't want to create silos here. So what we've done is created a team that works with each other. So Teresa could be invited to, for example, the shop innovative team. Why is she part of that? Well, they're having some issues with the maintenance program. So let's bring in HR, how do we correct that problem? So you have 30 days to correct that problem. If it's not corrected within 30 days, then we have to reanalyze the whole group and say, what are we doing wrong? So rather than at the year mark going, hey, we've had a bad year, we're saying within 30 days, we're going to correct that problem within 30 days. And it means it's tied into a risk register. I know I went into quite a bit of detail, but it's tied all together, Mark. On that risk register, it's labeled on that group is having trouble. So the whole company knows that we have to fix this problem. It's not keeping things from people. It's about showing them, how do we improve this? What can we do to make this better for the organization? Everyone's going to benefit. So it's a whole group effort. So once that risk has been identified, it's put on a register. And once that is on the register, it has to be identified. It has to be worked through. You put an action plan together. That action plan is closed off. The risk register is closed off, and you move on from that project. Tying in both companies. You can't, Teresa's group at retention, her whole group from Liberty West has to be tied into a group. So that way you don't have that silo effect. So they know what's going on, vice versa. And it's a transition of information. That's basically what it is. And it's organized transition. It's not, there's really detailed minutes kept at each meeting so that we know that we're not falling behind or we're gaining ground on it. Mark, does that explain Circle 8 to you?
Yeah.
Mark?
It seems like it's quite a robust program. Did you build this entirely on your own, or did you use some outside service for it?
No, we built this on our own. It was
Wow.
collective, many collective items that come into play there, where basically ISO had a risk register. So like, okay, let's take that idea. How do we implement that? Okay, how do we create this non-silo effect where Lib West and Lib Canada is close, in really close quarters? So our ops teams are working closely every 30 days. They were going through the issues that we're dealing with. And next thing you know, you realize that we've got a problem here, or we don't have a problem here. We're very successful in what we're doing. So our clients see that and they love it, and they're invited to meetings. We have guest speakers come to our meetings. Now with the so-called virtual data rooms that you have now, it's a lot easier to invite guests to those meetings. And the drivers' meetings are part of those innovative groups, part of the Circle 8. Because Mark, now what we can do is have our drivers' meeting broadcast as one broadcast American wide. So I love it. It's, for me, it's been very successful. It's been trial and error for the last 4 years. We did get actually a compliment there from a high respected accounting community. They read our program, they liked it, and so it was it's a nice feather in our cap. All right, and that's how.
That sounds like a really great model for business management, but it also it does bring the drivers into it as well. You mentioned having driver meetings and doing things for the drivers, but when I was looking through your notes from the Best Fleets interview from months ago now, but that was one of the things that jumped out at me about the program, is that it also became a foundation for how you do that regular collection of feedback from your drivers, how you get their opinions on things, and how you share what you're doing as a result, that kind of circle of communication with the driver. So can you talk a little bit more about how you do that, how you make that part of the driver communication?
Yeah, that's so basically with our MPG group, I call it Mile Per Gallon Club. I come up with a different name. I don't know why, but it stuck with me. So what we'll get is, okay, so we have APUs put on our trucks. We have different safety features put on our trucks. So what we'll do is get driver feedback on what equipment we're speccing out, how we're speccing it out, and we'll invite them to an MPG meeting, right? And discuss that and what ideas, what works, what doesn't work. Then we'll get feedback from our maintenance department. Then we'll get feedback from our safety department. So moving forward, we're speccing equipment out to what the drivers really need or want. And safety, of course, is tied into that. And then you have to go through the fuel programs. Are they actually working? Well, that's generated through the MPG because you're monitoring fuel mileage. So all those KPIs are tied into that, just that small little group called MPG, and the drivers, they get to be part of that. such as our safety group. We have a safety meeting, which is an innovative group, and I call it a safety group, but it's actually a safety innovative group because I want to hear what they think we should be doing differently. And then it's tied into the retention group. Teresa will have a driver question a driver. What do you think about this? What do you think about this pay? What do you think how this is working? She'll bring that back. Or, for example, Mark, it works the other way too. On the risk register, so a driver does an amazing job. What we'll do at the retention meeting, it will be brought up, this driver did something way out of above board. That goes on the risk register. Our US office reads that risk register. The driver goes out there and one of our managers out there will say, hey, good job, I heard what you did, or vice versa. How did you know about that 2,600 miles away? It's called clear and concise communication. It works both ways. I love it. To me, it's just such a satisfying comment for someone to hear 2,600 miles away that, hey, you've been doing a great job. But it's all a good, clear, concise communication, right?
And to add to that, we have a lot of email groups so that we're all aware of what's going on. For example, like a breakdown and a driver is sitting for days. I would contact them right away. Like after 24 hours, I would usually contact them, or right away. It doesn't really matter, but just so that everybody knows what's happening with a driver.
That was discovered, Mark. That was discovered last spring, early spring, when there was all those depth sensor problems across North America. So out of a risk register, it was developed out of the breakdown, like out of the shop maintenance, that we're having some breakdowns with these depth sensors. So it was noted in the risk register, hey, there's going to be a problem here. So what we made very clear to HR was, when you see that email, you have within 24 hours to contact that driver, make them feel at home, make them get them taken care of monetary wise. The shop has they're already working on the breakdown. Dispatch is aware of it. So there's 3 key components to that driver. So they don't feel like they're being left out in the cold, right? That, hey, what's going on? We can't get a depth sensor, for example. They know they have great communication. They're in a hotel room. They're going to be taken care of. Liberty is going to take, or Liberty West is going to take care of you no matter what. Yeah. And we got such great feedback from that. But again, it goes back, Mark, to the risk register, goes back to Circle 8 about clear and concise communication, right?
Yeah. And that must make your life a lot easier on the HR side, Teresa, if you've got all of that communication there, and presumably then your drivers are more interested in communicating with you and talking to you about what they like, and certainly is going to help on the retention side too.
It does, and that's the reason that we did it. And I think that we have always made a point of making sure that our drivers are okay. We always check in with them. We're lucky, fortunate that the company's small enough. We know everybody, and the drivers don't feel like, sometimes if they're new, they call me and say, oh, it's so-and-so, it's truck number. I already know who they are. I mean, they don't have to identify as a truck number here, fortunately, because we're small enough to know everything about them. So it's
no, that's good. It's good. I also saw that you make that part of your measurement for your fleet managers as well. So it isn't just something that you look at as sort of a broader business management tool or a communication tool for drivers, but I saw that the risk register factors into how you measure your dispatch and your fleet management group too. I thought that was very interesting.
Absolutely, Mark. And that's very key, because people need to know where they stand. As a manager, it's not a good job. It's not on the pat in the back. It's about, here's your KPI, here's what you're following, and it's let's get this fixed, or let's carry on with what we're doing. And it actually, and I'm telling you, they love it, because they know where they stand and how can we improve.
Yeah.
Right. It's all about improvement. That's what business is in my mind. It's about improvement, and whether it's good or bad, Mark, you got to try different things, whether they work or not. Right. And if you don't try something new, you're going to stagnate, right? So this is why Circle 8 really helps us in the communication, and you get great, when you have open forum meetings like that, you get good feedback back and forth, whether it's right or wrong, you're going to know in 30 days whether it worked or not. So,
Yeah.
right. And you got to, corporate has to be behind it. We have to be behind that manager. How else better to do that than supporting them in their decision making, right?
Mhm. Well, what's interesting is it's a big effort. It's obviously a company-wide initiative. You've been working on it for quite a while. It's a pretty massive undertaking, and you're not a huge company. It's one thing for companies with 500 or 1,000 or 5,000 trucks to be undertaking these business transformation projects, but a company your size, it's very uncommon to see them really tackling something like that. So it's good to see, because there's often that argument that, oh, only the big companies can do that. We're too small for that. We've only got 80 drivers. We can't do that kind of thing. Well, it just goes to show that any size fleet can do this if they're committed to it.
Definitely, absolutely. It works. We've proven it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. Yeah, it ties us both companies in. It really does.
Yeah. There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about that's sort of different about your organization, and that is coming out of where your offices are located, and that's a diversity. I mean, you've got a very diverse driver force out of your California office, and you've got a diversity that looks very much different coming out of the Ontario group. So how do you manage that? Is it something that you directly solicited, or is it just sort of an outcome of where you happen to be located? And how do you stay on top of it? How do you make sure everybody feels heard and concerned?
I think we attract the right people.
Yeah.
So it has just sort of happened. Yeah, I mean, it's changed over the years, absolutely. But yes, we have a lot of different sort of people. And the thing is, I have always stayed in touch with the West group as well. Like I talk to them all the time. I know the drivers that are hired, and I used to sort of do it directly, and now we have a person there that is doing a fantastic job. So I'm out of it a little bit more, but we still know everybody. Every employee sort of knows who's hired. So it just makes for a family sort of unit, and that's the way we are. It's always been that way, but it has stayed that way. Even if we've gotten a little bit bigger, which we haven't gotten that much bigger, but it's always stayed that way, that we're one unit.
Yeah, okay. You also had, as part of that, there was a note in your interview about something involving a Delancey Street project or Delancey Street group. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Greg got involved in that quite heavily a few years ago, and Teresa, you were more in detail with that. We were taking. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, these are people from all walks of life who have had difficulties, whether it be from drugs or alcohol or crime or whatever. So they go to a rehabilitation home. And the program, depending on what you're there for, could be 3 to 5 years. They live there, they eat there, they work there, they end up getting put into a job while they're there. And then when they sort of graduate from the program, we've taken these people and put them into get them their license and keep them there. They can't have bank accounts, so we have to pay them differently and that sort of thing. So yeah, we've had success with that.
Not just with the driver's mark, but with the
we've had office staff too.
Yeah, it's worked very well for us. Right.
That's an interesting angle, because often, one of the first things that people look at when hiring a driver is, do you have a criminal record? And so, you're directly going after people that have had problems in the past. So how do you manage that? How do you make sure that that doesn't cause a problem for any of your customers or any of your audits or any of that thing?
Well, it's mostly here that we ask the question, do you have a criminal record? Can't really ask that there. We ask it because they have to cross the border.
Right.
So the US drivers don't typically come here. There have been some that have, but it's getting less and less that they actually cross the border. So it doesn't really affect us that way. It would from this end. We can't.
Okay. That's interesting, because we do see a lot of US fleets that will look at that, and it's sort of part of, or what they call it, is part of their due diligence, that they have to make sure they're getting, the best quality drivers to protect themselves in court and things like that. But that doesn't sound like it's been much of a concern for you. You've been able to address that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you work through it, Mark. We again, it goes back to the processes of we have in place in the US and in Canada, that with the processes in the US doing these programs, you got to watch closely, but you work with it, and you've given people a second opportunity in life, and it works very well for them and us, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They still get support from Delancey after they're out of the program, but it's very successful.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great to hear, and it's good that you're sort of making the effort to try and bring new people in, and help them out. So that's good. I have another question that goes in a very different direction, and I don't normally talk about this on this podcast because it's one of those subjects that's kind of beaten to death a lot of the time, the issue of driver pay. And I bring it up here because you were one of the first companies I ever came across that was doing a guaranteed pay program. And way back before anybody even really called it that, you had this sort of pay stability in place. So how did you end up being, so early to the game there?
Well, I guess we realized early, Mark, that when you pay a layover, or when you're in operations and the driver's sitting for 24 hours and there's a problem with he can't get the load unloaded, or he's at the border, so it's just easier to generate a PO and give the driver a layover. And then we were finding out, okay, that's great that we're doing this, we're paying all this money, but why are we paying this out? Let's work backwards. Okay, there's issues at borders, so we have to correct that problem, or there's an issue with truck broke down. So when you really broke down the math and work backwards from it, and Brian, I got to give him credit on this one, he worked it backwards and said, you know what, if you really look at it, the driver's gone for this period of a time, he's averaging this many miles, so let's do reverse math on this. And we worked through, I don't know how many, I can't even recall how many incidents, and said, okay, over this period, but if you really look at it, actually he's gone this period of time, so why wouldn't we just give him this amount of money for the day that he's broke down rather than a layover? Because it's better for him, it takes care of his 10, 11 hours that he's not doing anything, and he's guaranteed pay. It makes sense. So we took that and worked through it. I know there was a lot of challenges with that at the beginning, Mark, but in the big picture, really, it hasn't cost us any more money because we've eliminated the POs for the layovers, and the driver's happy because he's making that guaranteed pay for a day, whatever circumstances are, whether it's weather, whether it's
it does come in. It's good for them if they have a breakdown, for example.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, we don't pay it often anymore because our drivers don't sit.
We fix it.
And over the years, their pay's increased or whatnot. So we generally never have to sort of top them up. They make more money in their miles and their picks and their drops and everything else. But it does work for breakdowns.
Yeah. The other thing is too, if there is an incident, like Teresa said, it's less and less because we've identified the areas of concern, the issues through the Circle 8. So before there's a pay issue, and there's nothing more that I can't stand, Mark, when a driver says to me he's leaving the company because he's not making any money. Well, hold on a second here. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. You shouldn't be leaving our company because you're not making any money. So I look at that and I say, wow, what do we need to change here? What do we need? And when you dig into it, you realize that, this is prior to guaranteed pay, that, wow, we got some issues here to fix, right? So it's identifying those issues, and it really makes you aware. So now when payroll has to pay a guaranteed pay, it goes on the risk register, or it's mentioned at one of the innovative group meetings, and it's identified right away that we have to fix this problem, right? I hate when you talk past tense and say, yeah, we should have done something about it. We should have done something. Yeah, we should have. no, let's do something about it, right?
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
That's answer your question about guaranteed pay.
No, it's a good answer. And your response to that one and the whole Circle 8 thing both speak to the fact that it all comes out of stepping back from the business and saying, hang on, why are we doing it like this? Rather than just accepting that this is the way we've done things or this is the process. And there's certainly a balance there where it's important to have a process and important to follow a process. And you're talking about that earlier. And you build a process, and as a business, you want to trust it and let it play out and let it run its course so that the business runs the way you want it to. But you also have to step back and say, hang on, is this the right process? Are we doing things the right way? You have to keep reevaluating those. And so with both the Circle 8 and with the guaranteed pay, it's really speaking to how easily you do that as an organization, to step back and say, well, are we really doing the right thing here? Does this make sense? Just because we've always done it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. And that's a challenge for people, because a lot of time they get stuck in this, stuck in sort of a rut of, well, we've always done it like this, and this is what the process says, and they just kind of blindly go through it. They don't question it ever.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the way, I always hate those terms. This is the way we've always done it. No, this is the way we're going to do it going forward, Mark, right?
Yeah. Good. Something else that you guys do that I think is kind of interesting goes to drivers and sort of their lives outside of the job and how you support their interests outside of the job. And so you've got a fund that you have set up to disperse to drivers that need support, need sponsorships, or youth teams, charitable groups, whatever. But it's a little bit different in that you've got this quarterly sponsorship program that you've put together. So tell us a little bit more about how that works and how you do your quarterly sponsorship dollars.
Well, one thing is, I know you're talking about the picnic barbecues, Mark, where people need help financially, or there's.
No, you said you've got $250 per quarter and sponsorship dollars that are up for grabs for drivers that have youth teams, charitable groups that they want, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, we do give to whoever asks us, really.
Yeah. And that's kind of done through our retention group. Mark will kind of identify if there's an area of concern, or identify, if somebody needs support where, I don't want to go into too much detail on that, because it's kind of confidential in a sense where, if you're going to help somebody out, you don't want everybody to hear about it, right? And so we
for sure
do whatever we can for any employee, not just the driver, for anyone, to support them through tough times. And we'll make sure they get the proper help they need, if they need that, through our AAP program. And we have had charitable barbecues before to raise money. We have had programs before where we've had some clothing, whatever the circumstances are, we support. And I think a lot of companies do that, Mark, but I like to think that we take it to an extent of really caring about the employee, to make it a better place for them to work, whatever we need to do, right?
Sure. Now that kind of raises the issue of the general kind of social events and things, and that must be challenging for you, having the two distinct groups like that. So how do you manage social events and social activities across the terminals?
Another great question, Mark. So out of our retention meeting, what we discovered is so we'll talk about, here's an example. We've got the National Truck Appreciation Week coming up in September. So we start working on that for this year. We started working on that 11 months ago. So every meeting, every 30 days at that meeting, we talk about it. Does anybody have any collective ideas? Well, I heard this, I heard that, I'd like to try this. Okay, so throughout the year, we'll discuss that. And then we'll finally come to conclusion, execute what we all agree upon, right? So going back to it, for our Christmas parties, obviously with COVID, we haven't been able to have any, but we do a charitable donation on the employees' behalf to different groups so that they still feel that they're involved. And then obviously with the drivers' meetings, with the Christmas parties, we just celebrate it at the drivers' meeting, and then hopefully we'll eventually get back to that. So,
and we like to do the same thing at both companies.
Yeah. So what I was trying to get to is the fact is that we discuss what we're going to do to execute and how we're going to do it, and then both companies will do the same thing, rather than having two different divisions do something different, then the other one goes, well, how come you're doing this here in Canada and not doing it in the US, or vice versa? So that's how Circle 8 works. It keeps it tight, it keeps it click, and this is what we're doing going forward, right? So truck shows, for example, show and shines, driver shows, employee shows, different things like that. That's what we try to keep everything really nip and tuck with that.
Nice, nice. Okay. That is all of the things that I had on my list that I wanted to talk about. So before we wrap up, are there other things that you think kind of define your culture that you wanted to make sure we get covered here?
I think in the last few years, I think we've worked really, really hard, our whole groups, making this culture a great place to work. Mark, winning this award this year is a huge affirmation that we're doing the right things. This to me, this past year, winning that, and unfortunately I couldn't go to Vegas. I wanted to be there. Because my dream was to be on that stage and say, you know, we're doing the right things. We're creating the right things, and we've worked bloody hard at it, and we're going to continue working hard at it.
So we need to win again. So
Yeah. So
Yeah.
but the thing is, my point is Mark, all these things are about the employees. That's all it is. It's about making a better company and making it a great place to work. And just, you know, our customers see it. We get a lot of compliments from our clients. You know, we have great drivers. We've had compliments. And again, it goes back to the risk register where a client will call, that goes on there, and it's noted through the HR department to the driver. It's about the consistent communication of what we do. And it's about, we've always wanted to be a good company. Now it's about being a great company, and being a great company, you've got to change, and you got to communicate.
It's always been a really big thing for me, communication.
Yeah.
I communicate too much. They'll get emails from me constantly, and it's a joke, but I really do think that the more that people know about a driver or whatever, I mean, it could be a birthday, it could be loss of a family member or whatever. If they come into the shop and the mechanics know that, instead of just like, you know, nothing about the person, then it makes them feel so much better. Communicate everything. So I think it's really important.
And Mark, you know, the key, I think too, is we have fun doing what we're doing. We have a lot of fun doing. Trust me, there's stressful days, but we actually have a lot of fun, and it's working with everybody. And I love hearing the ideas people have. It's taking those ideas, and some of them are great, some of them are wonderful, some are excellent, and you just run with them and go with it. Give people the creativity that they need to make a better place to work. Right? It's fun.
That is a really good observation. That, you know, when you make it enjoyable, or when you have fun doing it, it permeates the whole organization. It becomes clear that you're doing something that you enjoy, and people get more personally invested in it. So that's a really good observation. I think that is a fabulous place to close out this episode, because everybody should be having fun with what they're doing. So thanks very much for participating.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.